wound from a knife in my back that just is giving me heck lately, and it's just really irritating, so I have to kind of wiggle around a little bit.
I titled it A Shot Across the Bow of the Good Old Boys.
Just, they feel helpless, they don't feel heard, they have nowhere to turn.
Some Republicans as well believe that government has the answers. And let me tell y'all something. I don't know anything government does well. Nothing.
Aren't there laws that say that you have public meetings so that the public can have accountability of their elected officials?
As a member of the media, I'm very concerned about what I've just heard.
Well, I'm not thinking Star Wars at all. I'm thinking zombie apocalypse. Oh, folks coming from the border down there?
Yeah, it's going to border. It's actually going to Mexico and Bossier.
Doesn't mean they interpret it the same way that I do. For instance, the Second Amendment. I take it very literally. That's been interpreted different ways in the court system all the way up to SCOTUS.
We're still right now combined on both pages and YouTube at 264 people watching. That is amazing, folks.
Through conscious, shocking actions, which in turn would enrich sitting city council members Scott Irwin and David Montgomery Jr.
In theory, it's an every week thing. We got to double check and make sure it's like a miracle any of this actually works. This live broadcast is brought to you by the Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 25 years in the mortgage business. Pelican Training and Consulting. Reach out to Julie Ferris. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. And folks sharing information and watching out. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go. Well, I'm trying not to say it, but here we are.
Well, yeah, wait a minute. What was up there? It just seems like this happened so fast. I mean,
Well, you wanted a shorter countdown. You wanted a shorter countdown. You got it.
Holy shamoly. We're here live, ready to go. Well, I don't know. We're up to 100 and plus, and it's growing. I don't know. You think we're going to break the internet tonight, or we're going to pull a Donald Trump, Elon Musk deal here?
Well, I guess for Bossier Parish and the surrounding area in Bossier City, we might be close. It's all relative. I mean, I can't imagine what topic we have tonight that would draw so many people.
Well, the interesting thing is that I'm starting to see this issue of taxes and, money pop up in different threads all across the whole state of Louisiana. So I don't know, maybe Bossier, maybe we're just ahead of the curve here because we've been kind of rocking on about it for a few weeks.
Yeah, and we've dropped a few hints that people need to be, aware of what's going to happen with the assessments and all that sort of thing. And I guess nobody kind of took us seriously till they got it in the mail. But we definitely going to talk about it tonight because I think we have the man on. He's waiting in the green room area, but I think we have the man on who knows a thing or two about taxes and tax assessments.
Yeah, so it's that time of the year, and I've seen, like I said, I saw a lot of people in I've seen a lot of people in Caddo Parish. I've seen some people in some of the different parishes in South Louisiana. Everybody's getting wound up about their taxes. And we thought, what better way to talk about the issue than to get the authority is the tax assessor of our parish. Now, I think he's only going to speak to Bossier Parish, but, for a lot of the folks who are watching, in some of the different places across the state, I think a lot of the content and the information that is going to be shared, applies to your parish as well. The same questions that you may have there probably are going to get answered here tonight on this show.
Yeah, and speaking of questions, so I'm going to put this in the comments of the show live, and then I'm going to show it on the screen, and we'll have Bobby on here in just a few minutes. All right. Notice that comment that I just popped up right there. So here's the way this is going to work, everybody. We appreciate all the comments. And we just ask that you keep it relatively civil. That's it. We don't want to have to ban somebody, and we had never had to do that. But if you have a question that you would like asked, see the way I've got this question done. I put question in all caps in the comments. That way I can search for it and hopefully display your question or comment if it's relevant. So pay attention to how I've got this one formatted. If you have a question, type it in the comments and ask it, and we'll try to address it if at all possible. Okay. Shall we? Oh, and folks, y'all need to share and tag folks, because in about 30 seconds, we're fixing to have Bobby on, and we're going to get right into talking about taxes and tax assessments and all that sort of thing. Mr.
Yeah,
Lowrie?
and yeah, it's gonna blow a lot of people's minds, and we don't want to get 3/4 of the way through this, and then somebody chimes in and they're asking a question that we talked about in the beginning of it. And I know that sounds a little crass, but just we'd like for everybody to be here to get it, because this, I don't know. I mean, this is boring stuff. I mean, I tell you, if I had to be the tax assessor, I think I'd cut my wrists. I just,
Well,
I really do.
yeah, and also we're going to have your wife on, Kara, after we have Bobby, and she's going to go a little in depth into the implications for your mortgage and all sorts of that, because she's the expert on that sort of thing. So you're definitely going to want to stay on after Bobby, because we got a lot to discuss tonight.
If you own a
All right.
house in Louisiana, you definitely want to be paying attention. So, without further ado, let's skip some of the little small stuff we were going to do at the beginning of the show, and we'll break from the notes right out of the gate and go straight to Bobby.
Well, let me click a button, and we've got picture. Can you hear us, Mr. Bobby?
Yes, yes, I can hear you fine, and I just want to thank both of you for inviting me on tonight, and I look forward to dissecting this topic as best I can.
All right, so one simple rule: it's live, no takebacks.
There you go.
All right, Bobby. So, we've been getting a ton of emails. I mean, I know you probably have gotten a million times what we've got, but we've gotten a ton of emails, questions, and all. And one question kind of was put out there toward us was like, how much additional money, total will Bossier Parish taxing authorities collect, off of the property owners with this new increase? Is there a number, a total number? Is there any way to know that?
Uh, at this point, there is not a way to know that, and I'm going to explain that. So, I'm required by law to send out these pre-notices. And we actually do this every year, but in every other year except a reassessment year, you're only required to send them to anybody's who increased by 15%. So in a non-reassessment year, there's not a lot of people that get these. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not relative to everybody in the parish. But in a reassessment year, you have to send these notices whether their value went up, down, stayed the same, it doesn't matter. But the problem is, and if you look at the statute that talks about these reassessment notices, there's one number that I am not required to put on those reassessment numbers, and that is the tax dollar amount. But I choose to do that anyway because people look at an assessment from one year to the next, they can't relate that to tax dollars. I want them to understand how that relates. So when you do those pre-notices, you have to use the information you have at hand, and the information right now is last year's millage rates. In Louisiana, in a reassessment year, all the taxing bodies are required to roll backwards to an adjusted millage rate that generates the same amount of money as it did the year before. Now, it gets more complicated. So with a different public meeting with a whole lot more requirements, and I know I sent y'all that information, they can roll forward back up to their what's called their maximum millage rates, which is the millage rates on the pre-notices we sent. So that is the absolute worst case scenario. That it's going to be. The best case scenario is that all those taxing bodies roll backwards.
Okay, so right out of the gate, who sets those millage rates? Is it you? Is it the good sheriff? Who is responsible for this? Are you the man that sets the rates and makes everybody's taxes go up?
That is a great question, and you have to excuse me. My light's on automatic sensor. I wasn't moving enough. It's a great question. So there is one millage rate that I am 100% responsible for, and that is my millage rate, the assessment office millage rate. I have already had my meeting. I have already rolled that millage rate back down to the adjusted millage rate and done. All the other taxing bodies, you think of anything that gets property tax in Bossier Parish, school board, sheriff, police jury, levy district, Cypress Black Bayou, Shreveport Bossier Port, Red River Waterway, Fire District 1, Fire District 2, Fire District 3, City of Bossier. All those, they each have their individual meetings to set their millage rate. So they each individually decide. They have to roll back to the adjusted, but at some point they can advertise and roll forward, which is a pretty complicated process for them, but roll forward back up to the max.
Okay, so here's Duke. I want to, since we're talking about the rates and all that, I want to put this on the screen real quick. So hold on just a second. This was a graphic that we did from the 2019 deal, and it may be kind of hard for some folks to read, but it's showing the Bossier Parish School Board as an example, and it shows a residential property value of $100,000 less $75,000 homestead exemption gives a net value of $25 times the assessment rate of 10%, it's $2,500, times for the school board was 46.5 mils. So that's the same as multiplying that $2,500 by 0.0465. So that would be a tax for the school board in this example of $116.25. Now, Bobby, I don't think we sent you this graphic, but is that about the way those millages break down on a property value of $100,000 in this example showing the Bossier Parish School Board rate at 46.5 mils?
Theoretically, for the most part, yes, that is the way it breaks down. But when you threw that graphic up there, my eyes got drawn to the left corner of the graphic, where at that time 70% of taxes are paid Bossier Parish are on businesses. So the business assessment rate. So land is always at 10%, no matter what. Residential is always at 10%, no matter what. Commercial or business building is at 15%. So if you have $100,000 residence and you have $100,000 business building, the $100,000 business building is going to pay 50% more than the $100,000 residence because of the assessment rate. And then it goes a little bit deeper. You have what's called public service, which tends to be a lot of your public utilities, SWEPCO, Entergy, Kansas City Southern, things like that. Their assessment rate is 25%. So they pay an even larger amount. So, for example, and I don't have the list in front of me, the top 10 taxpayers, number one on that list is a company called Acadiana. And Acadiana is an oil and gas producing company, typically in South Bossier more than anywhere else. So they're paying property tax on those wells and well equipment and pipelines and gathering lines and gauges, and they are by far the number one taxpayer in Bossier Parish.
Wow. Wow. Well, let's go to cut 15, Rex. And you were talking earlier, Bobby, about, the notice of that all of these different bodies have to have their meetings and they have to have the notices, and you've already had your meeting in your office and you've already done that. And,
That's right.
and I think, this is a pretty good example. And I think the one on the left is Bossier Fire District 4, and the print may be a little bit too small for everybody to read, but and then the middle one is the police jury, and I think the right one may be the sheriff's office. And that was what you were talking about, and I think you were kind of getting towards the format, correct?
That's correct. And these are what you would call a roll forward advertisement. So their intent with these advertisements is to have a meeting where they will discuss rolling forward or rolling back up to the maximum millage rate. There's some things that are required in this advertisement. Number one, you notice it is not in the legal or advertising section in the newspaper. By law, it can't be. It has to be in a prominent place in the newspaper. It has to be a certain size font. It has to be in bold print. It has to be framed like it is. There have to be 2 advertisements, and there has to be at least 30 days in between both advertisements. It has to include the phrase without a further vote of the people. So if you look at those, you will see without a further vote of the people in each one of those advertisements. It also has to list what the increase by rolling up back to their max, which is what we used on pre-notices, what the gain in each of their deal will be. And I'll just say this. So these are 3 here. And just because they advertise these public meetings and they're going to have this public meeting, they can very well get there and vote not to roll forward. These advertising requirements are pretty complicated. The tax roll has to be filed in October. So they're on some pretty strict guidelines. So there may be some of these that have already decided we're not going to do that. But they had already advertised or bought the advertising and run that forward. But it also has to be in a newspaper, the Parish Journal, and a newspaper of higher circulation if there is one. So in Bossier, most journals are the Bossier Press Tribune, and the next highest circulation would be the Shreveport Times. So it would advertise in both of those.
Now,
And go ahead.
well, let me stop you because I want to kind of clarify something. I guess I could say, bring this down to a lower level for everyday people that may or may not understand here, but we're kind of talking about 2 different things. Right here, we're talking about the districts rolling forward or leaving the same or rolling back the millages. But what's got everybody's dander up right now is reassessment, which is a different thing than that's right. So I just wanted to make sure and clarify that as we're talking about this, that we are talking about kind of 2 different things and we're mixing them together in case somebody gets a little confused.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Duke. So while we're on the subject of rolling forward and rolling backward or staying the same, Bobby, maybe if you can go into a little more detail about that process, and then we'll move on and start inching our way towards the reassessment and what's caused everybody to get out their torches and pitchforks.
Perfect. Well, the millage adoptions, and they happen every year with all the taxing bodies. Most of the time, like in my case, if I'm going to adopt my normal millage, it's just a 24-hour requirement of a publication, posting it on the door, and have my meeting and vote. And I'm not rolling forward or doing anything like that. To take that next step, and I'm not, the tax body says, I don't want that rollback millage rate. I want something higher, to the max or somewhere in between, requires this much more complicated, much longer advertising process that goes with it. So if I could explain it in layman's terms how property tax works. So you have state income tax, and for whatever bracket you're in, it is a set rate. You know, I pay this percent income tax. That's the end of the calculation. You know, I may get some deductions, I may get some credits, but I pay that. If I go to the grocery store and I buy a gallon of milk, it is a set sales tax, and it's calculated against that price of a gallon of milk. Property tax work more like a weights and balances, if you will, of if assessments go up, millage rates are supposed to come down to offset. And if by chance assessments go down, millage rates are supposed to go up. Always to generate the same amount of money, less anything new. So anything built in coming on the roll in 2024, they get that automatically. It's only so you're basically reassessing 2023, what was there in 2023. Everything above that is gravy, and they get that already, but that's what you're reassessing. And so the millages are based on that.
Okay, perfect. So let me pull up, and I think this will be a good time to pull it up, so let me know. But I'm going to pull up revised statute 47:1705, which is the one. Let me switch screens here. Let's see. All right. And so, and again, folks, we understand that this may be small print, especially if you're on mobile. I want to remind everybody that we will post a lot of these cuts after the show or tomorrow so that you can review them straight from the Facebook page as well. But this is revised statute 47:1705, and you've got a couple of areas highlighted in green here. Do you want to go through that, Bobby, or do you need me to read it?
No, sure. This is the reassessment notes. If you're planning on rolling forward, this is the revised statute that addresses that. And you see paragraph B1A, it's all highlighted. Right below that is B1I or BI, I believe. And the phrase in there is, not elected by voters. So you do have boards that are not elected by voters, like fire districts, Cypress Black Bayou, Port, things like that can do that. If you get further down under CI, you say that, inside that advertisement, it has to say without further voter approval. It has to say that. AA, it has to have an estimate of the taxes that are going to be collected by increasing the millage rate. Double B, the notice has to you have to have internet. They're supposed to have it on the internet if they've got that. Double I, double A has to be published 2 separate days, no no less than 30 days apart. Official Journal or the next largest circulation. And it goes on to say that. And again, it goes on to say it has to be on their website. And then I believe there's a second page to this.
Get that one pulled up here. Hold on just a second.
So Bobby, on that page right there, I noticed something when we were talking about elected bodies and non-elected bodies.
Right.
Did I interpret when I read that correctly that elected bodies are required to have a 2/3 vote, whereas non-elected bodies don't?
I believe that's correct. I would have to go back and look at it, but I believe that's correct. The general rule of thumb is they all have to have a 2/3 vote. But I'm not the gatekeeper of, whether or not they have the votes or not, or anything like that. But yeah, it requires. So the 3 we saw, that fire district's going to have a 2/3 vote. The police jury will have to have a 2/3 vote, and the sheriff will have to have a 2/3 vote. There's only one sheriff, so he either votes yes or no, and that's it. So you can't split him into 3 pieces. But for instance, the police jury's advertisement, it's not just 2/3 of those present, it is 2/3 of their board. So if 3 people don't show up, it can affect how their 2/3 come out. So,
but I think the important thing there is for folks that are watching and new to the show, Duke and I get on our soapbox all the time. Folks need to start attending the meetings, paying attention, and then another key thing is also reaching out to your police jury members, reaching out to the sheriff, reaching out to the Cypress District Board members, heck, the city council. But the main thing is be active, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Duke and Bobby, but unfortunately, these taxes are not like they just got snuck in here. They were all voted on by elected officials or appointed bureaucrats of the elected officials. Is that a true statement?
Well, at some point in time, they were voted on by the people at some point in time. But again, millage rates have rolled back through the years. Several of them have, and you know, and they're voting now. Do I want to take this lesser millage rate to generate the same amount of money, or do I want to, you know, try to get a little bit more? And you know, for me, you know, if they're going to try to get a little bit more, they need to make their case of why they're trying to get a little bit more. What are they going to do? You know, things like that.
Okay.
But again, and I'm going to go back to it again, the reassessment and the money that'll be generated off of reassessment, that's a different deal than, you know, whether they roll forward or they don't. So
Not the money. The money that's generated off of reassessment is directly related to whether they roll back or roll forward, because those millage rates dictate what everybody's bill is going to be.
right, but if the assessment stayed the same and they roll forward, you're going to pay more. But if
That's
the
right.
assessment stayed the same and they just kept them static, we'd have the same pot of money. But if the assessment increases and they leave it the same, their pot of money increases. But if the assessment increases and they roll forward, the pot of money increases twice. Correct?
No, I'm going to try to untangle that for you.
Okay.
No,
I'm good at
no.
butchering things.
So again, the pre-notice is the worst case scenario. That's the theoretical roll forward pre-notice. Okay. So if they roll back, then their monies will be less. So it's not, it's always assessment times millage rate equals your tax bill. So it's not a double whammy if they roll forward. It would be less than what's on the pre-notice.
But wait a minute. If my property is, let's just use easy numbers, $500,000, it's reassessed to $750,000, and I'm paying 10% on my $750,000 property versus the $500,000, that's going to be a tax increase.
That is correct. So let me go back to the rollback. The rollback is the big pot of rolling back to generate the same amount of money. It doesn't mean that my individual taxes will go back to what they were pre-reassessment, because pre-reassessment, you know, like the average was 16% increase in value. If mine went up 18%, even if they roll back, I'm going to pay more because I was assessed a little bit more.
Okay. We clear as mud?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Look, I could talk about this all night. So,
Hey.
Whew, I
So-
can't. I'll admit right now.
All right. So I'm still trying to, and I'm sure some folks watching and folks, I want to let everybody know I do see the comments scrolling by. I want to remind you, if you have a question, put the word question in all caps in front of your question in the comments. That way I can search and see it, and we'll try to get to them here in just a little bit. All right. I'm still a little fuzzy on the rolling forward and rolling back to keep the tax monies collected about the same. So let me explain where I'm still a little bit fuzzy. So if the parish is growing, and we know the parish of Bossier is growing at a certain percentage, the city itself not so much, but the parish is growing overall. As more people build houses and move into the parish or buy property and all that, then they're going, let's say that they build a house, then they're going to have that property and that house assessed, and that's going to be more money coming in for the parish and all the other taxing authorities. Okay, so that's going to increase it. Now, when we say that rolling forward or rolling backward to keep the monies about the same, is that the total taxes taken in by all the taxing authorities, or how does that work?
No. Let me go back.
Okay.
So in a reassessment, in the 2024 reassessment, you're reassessing 2023's tax roll. That means if a house didn't exist in 2023 or a business didn't exist in 2023, it is not being reassessed. So when it comes on in 2024, it is all new money to that governing entity, whoever it may be.
Okay. Okay. That helps a little bit. All right. So I think we probably need to move into the area that's got everybody's, pitchforks and torches out, and into the reassessment and what has happened since, 2019 or whenever the last reassessment was. We'll let you explain all that. Do you have any other questions or things we need to address before we move to that part?
No, I was fielding my phone blowing up.
Right. I'm trying to watch the comments and the text messages and all that too. So, okay, let's move into the reassessment. So everybody's got their pre-notices in, and
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people have sticker shock, so to speak. So explain why people are having sticker shock. What's happened? Why does it seem that the taxes have jumped so much, or the assessments? Let me rephrase that.
Well, that's a complicated question. Basically, your house is worth more today than it was in the past. Bossier Parish by far has been the fastest growing parish in North Louisiana for the 20 some odd years I've been here. It has always been one of the fastest growing parishes in the state of Louisiana. And so just what people pay for houses, which I'm not in control of, is just, to myself, I say at times, this has got to stop sometimes, or this has got to slow down. And it just never does. For example, after COVID, when the interest rates started going up and got up above 7%, a logical person would have thought the housing market would have eased or slowed down. It did not. It kept going, as it's been. People are building houses for $250 a square foot. Houses are selling, slightly older houses, $200 a square foot. Even older, $150 a square foot. It's hard to find a house in Bossier Parish for less than $100 a square foot. That's just the facts. And believe it, don't believe it, Bossier is a great place to be. There are people heading here, coming here. The schools are good. Theoretically, crime is low. We have pretty good streets. It's just a great place to live. So people are willing to pay for that. And I'm going to ask this question, and it's a rhetorical question. What are the three main factors in the value of a piece of property?
Location, location, and location.
Bingo. So, Bossier is and has been the location, and people do that. For example, the corner of East Tech or Airline and East Texas Street, people are paying $15 a square foot for property right there. And it's just amazing what people are paying all up and down Airline Drive, 10, 12, $14 a square foot. Same way on Benton Road. You get north of 220, it's the same thing. We all saw the subdivision uh, across the levee that flooded, I think it was 2016, and I can't remember the name of it. People are paying $250,000 for a lot, for one subdivision lot. People are paying that for the lots on the backside of the lake. People are paying it. So, if I lived down the street from that and I bought my lot for $80,000, and then 4 years later, people are paying $120 for a lot, then mine's worth $120,000. It's just simple math.
Okay. So, and I'm going to go ahead and read this question a little bit ahead of time because it's pertinent to what you were just discussing, Bobby. The question is from Vicky Holt, hope I said that right. Anyway, what are the assessments based on? You just mentioned square footage. Is it a set percentage per square foot? So maybe explain a little bit more now into how y'all go about assessing the value of a property or a house.
Sure. And it's I'm a math geek, so I like talking about this stuff. Basically, in Bossier, the way our system works and the system we have, and I'm sure it's slightly different in other parishes, we have every house classed. Okay. So we have classes 1 through 9. One being the smallest little shack you can think of, 9 being the 10, 15, 20,000 square foot house that you can think of. We have them all doing there. So like Green Acres Place, it'll have some class 7s, which are typically your normal custom type house. It may have some 6s, which are low custom or high tract type housing. It'll have maybe a class 8 house, which is a nicer house. Probably doesn't have a class 9 in it, but you can go to Oak Alley and you're going to find class 9 houses. And so each one is based. So I'm not comparing a house in Old Green Acres to a house in Oak Alley. That's just not a good comparable. So we have sales all over the parish in various subdivisions, a lot of them, and I think I sent you several examples of them, and houses just like them that have sold. And that's what we're basing the price per square foot on. If you put granite countertops and marble flooring in your house is going to be worth more than the house down the street that has linoleum and carpet. If you have 3 fireplaces, yours is going to be worth more than a house with 1 fireplace. If you have a 4-car garage, yours is going to be worth more than a house with a 2-car garage.
Okay, so let me throw this in there, Duke. Sorry, but so I had a friend of mine that I was talking to this afternoon. He said, "Oh yeah, I just got my notice in, and my taxes went way up." And he said, "I know they hadn't driven out here and looked at my house or any of my neighbors' houses. How do y'all go about determining the value and how many fireplaces a house has? How do the tax assessors do that? Is it like Santa Claus and the sleigh going around? Or do you have magic elves or what?"
We're very, very sneaky. No, when that house was built, I don't care when it was built, we have made visits to that house. Most of the time, anywhere from 4 to 6 or 8 visits to that house. We're measuring it. We're seeing what kind of finishing it has. We're doing all that. Every time a house sells in Bossier Parish, we revisit that house. Every time one sells. If we get a permit, let's say somebody's got a permit for a new swimming pool, we revisit that house. Typically it's 8 to 4:30. That's our hours of operation. So most of the time the people are not there. Now we're not going to go in their backyard without their knowledge. We're not going to do that. We typically, and some people have probably seen them, we'll leave a door hanger on the door. Hey, please contact us. We need to come out and measure your house. And we do that. And that very person, I guarantee you, if he walked in my office tomorrow and said, "You've never been to my house," I could turn my screen around and show him the picture we took the last time we were there.
For that question. Okay, Mr. Lowrie.
I'm about to bite my tongue off here. But so housing market. Yeah, Bossier, we're in. I mean, look, this is your home. It's my home. It's Rex's home. I mean, I've been here since the day I was brought into this world, and I'm going to be buried here. But property values of recent, being in the industry, there's a lot of properties have sold for more than appraised value, and there was a little bit of a crunch here recently. There was a lot of negotiations going on. But you're saying you're based reassessments off of uh, sales prices, right? Did I hear you say that correctly?
Yes, sir.
So what if the home didn't sell for? It's been in the same person's name for over 20 years, but then you've got a house that sold within the last year. Obviously, the last time the house sold, or one house sold 20, 30 years ago, was a whole lot less. I mean, you have a mathematical calculation to appreciate it, or
We're doing it exactly like an appraiser would do it, Duke. If I go into Green Acres Place and I have a house that hasn't sold in 30 years, I'm going to look and see what houses around it have sold that are just like it.
so you're going to
And
use comparables.
that's exactly right. We're going to use comparables, and I know I gave Rex some examples of those that we use. Uh, and if somebody walks in our office tomorrow and they say, I just don't, I don't get it, uh, we'll sit them down and we will show them those sales. We can pull them up on GIS map, and look, it's even shocking to me, and I do this every day, that you go into a subdivision like Legacy, and there's 124 sales in that subdivision in the time period we're looking at. You can value every house in there with 124 sales.
All right, so I'm going to switch screens real quick. This is the one on Shadow Ridge, 3821 Shadow Ridge. And I want everybody to know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bobby, but you can go to the tax assessor's website and you've got a link there you can click and put in your address or whatever. You can search for all these property values. Isn't that correct?
That they can search for their own particular value. And I believe if they put in a municipal address, then they can see other people's. It's some limited information. It's not as much if you have your own assessment number, but they can see some things. So, the example you got right there, Shadow Ridge or Shadow Bend, I believe that's in Dogwood. Yep, it actually says Dogwood right there. So that is in Dogwood. So that's a house. Uh, it has not sold. It was built in 1994, and it's 1,565 square feet. And you have three houses right there. You got one in a little over a tenth of a mile, one at 0.32 miles, and one at 0.81 miles, all in Dogwood, all houses built around the same time. House number one, which is, I got to get my glasses on, 3720 Shadow Bend. It sold for $206,000. Now, I want you to listen to this close. It sold for $206,000. Right now, we have it assessed at $187,960. So I'm not at market 100%. I'm below market. And it sold for $142.46 a square foot. Look at the house right beside it. Same thing. Sold for $110,000. We have it at $194. It's 1,372 square feet. It sold for $153 a square foot. Next one, $209,000. We have it at $184. It sold for $137.41 a square foot. And then you go back to the house we're looking at in yellow. We have it valued at $125 a square foot. It's well within all of those parameters of those houses that sold.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people say, oh, he's got, they've appraised my house too high and blah, blah, blah. So if somebody has a problem with their assessment, can they reach out to your office and if they have an issue or don't think it's right?
Absolutely. We have fielded probably over 1,000 phone calls and visits in the last week. But I'm going to share this story with you. because it's relevant. We have a lot of people that come in and we sit them down and we say, okay, Mr. Smith, we have your house at $300,000. Well, yeah, that's about right. It's probably worth a little bit more than that. Well, when they say that, I'm through talking, and they say, well, we're done. Well, yeah, but I don't like this other number over here. I don't like this tax dollar number. Well, I'm not in charge of the tax dollar number. I'm in charge of the value. So here you have another one, Fox Street. I believe that is Bel Air or Shady Grove area. The house was built in 1977, so it's an older house. You see right beside it, a little over a tenth of a mile away, Linnell Street. The house sold for 179, basically $180,000. We have it at 162. Maria Street sold for $221,000. We have it at 203. Oleander, 203 is the selling price. We have it at 163. One was $109 a square foot, one was 105, one was 111, and the subject property is 112. It's right in the parameter.
Well, I would concede, Bobby, and I looked at some other ones as well, that the assessments all were under the sales price. I would probably guess that almost all of them are. But here's to me the thousand.
And I can explain why they are if you would like an explanation.
Absolutely, love to hear it.
Number one, so the 2024 reassessment theoretically has to be based on January 1 of 2023. Okay. And so the body that regulates me, the Louisiana Tax Commission, does a look back 6 months before January 1, 2023, and 6 months after January 1 of 2023. So we're looking in that window there of those sales. Okay. And then when it's a reassessment year, okay, the law says that I must be within 90 or 110% of market. Okay. So when our folks are getting ready and they come to me and they say, okay, Bobby, where do you want to be? I pick a number. This year I picked 96%. So we're a year behind and we're at 96%. So the market has already grown since January 1 of 2023, about 3 or 4%. And I'm at 96%. So I'm 4% less. So that's anywhere from 7 or 8% less than a house would sell for today.
So, and that addressed one of the questions. I don't see it right now because they're scrolling by, but that addressed somebody's question that was just in the comments. So, all right, let's talk about the reassessments and why there was such a drastic, or it seems to be drastic, jump. And it's my understanding that had to do with the COVID time period.
Some of it had to do with that, and let me say this off the bat: this is by far not the worst reassessment I've ever had. When you go back to the 2000, 2004, 2008, it was those were some really Bossier was growing some of the home values 20, 25, 30% jumps in home values back in those days. So this is by far not the worst. However, if you roll back to 2020, we all know what was happening in 2020. We were under the COVID and the world was going to end. Well, the state, there's a revised statute that says if you're under an emergency declaration, that you can keep everything tight. You don't have to reassess. You don't have to do that. And so I chose at that time to stick with emergency order and just not reassess in 2020. And so, this is really from 2018 until today. And let me say this too, and it gets caught up in this. So we have to send a pre-notice to everybody. The pre-notice may or may not be just because of an increase in value. It may be also because they built a two-car detached garage, or they added 500 square feet to their house, or they did those things. And I saw the comments rolling a little bit before we did, and people doing different percentages. Typically, they're talking about the percentage of the taxes that went up. Okay. If you go over there and calculate the percentage of the assessment change, you're not going to see those same numbers, and I'm going to explain why. So let's say that 4 years ago, I said a house was worth $85,000. Okay. That was the value I had set for it. This reassessment comes and I say now that house is worth $95,000. How much of a tax increase percentage wise is that?
Off the top of my head, about a 10% increase, give or take a little.
It is a 100% increase in their property taxes. And I'm going to explain why. On the $85,000 house, 75 is exempt. So they're only paying taxes on $10,000. So when you increase it to 95,000, now they're paying taxes on $20,000. So when you see these big percentages, typically that's people that are a lot closer to homestead exemption. As a matter of fact, we have many that were under homestead exemption. So all they were paying out in the parish would be about $36. That's the ambulance fee. And now they're above homestead exemption. Maybe they went from like 70,000 to 90,000. Now they got a $200 tax bill. So it's a lot. It's a big increase to them. $200 to them is like $1,000 is to me.
Right. Yeah. I completely forgot about the homestead exemption. That's a good point.
Well, I have I'm glad you said exemptions, because I've got a lot of stuff regarding exemptions. And Rex, you talked about the emergency declaration. I mean, there's exemptions that apply to the emergency declaration, but there's also, senior citizens freeze, veterans, disabled people, public safety exemptions. There's a lot of different kinds of exemptions. Oil and gas with the severance tax. Is there any way to quantify all of those different exemptions and what that takes out of the money coming into the public bodies?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm gonna give you examples. So the one we've heard the most about, obviously, is the in our offices. I'm 67 years old, and I made $110,000, and you won't let me freeze my assessment. Well, the law says the cap is $100,000. I don't set that. The state legislature sets that. Matter of fact, when it first started, it was at $50,000. It has gone up to $100,000 in just the time I've been assessor. The veterans deal, I believe that was 2 years ago, where they voted if you're a 100% disabled veteran, then you are totally exempt. You don't pay anything. And I'll say, I am a veteran and I have a veteran disability. I'm not 100%, but I do have a veteran disability. Certainly people are going to take advantage of this. And there's a lot of them out there. There's a fire and police one that hasn't been approved by the police jury because it has to be approved by the governing body that will exempt or could possibly exempt another class of people. So here's the way that I look at it. So government has a fixed amount of money that it's called their budget. This is how much money I need to run each year. And that number will not change. It does not change. It's the same year after year after year. So if 10 people go into a
Are you stating that as a fact?
No, I'm not stating it as an absolute fact.
Because I'm thinking, my next question is, why the hell would you say that? Because that's bull crap. If Bobby Edmiston's office is spending too much money, he's gonna cut the lights off.
Well, and I agree with that, but I'm saying the property tax generates a certain pot of money. So if you take everybody in that, it generates this pot of money. So the example I was going to use, Duke, is, let's say 10 people go to a restaurant to eat supper, and the bill is $1,000. So each one of them owe $100. Okay. Let's say a week later, those same 10 people go to that restaurant. The bill's $1,000, but 3 of them skip out or leave before the bill's paid. The bill's still $1,000, so 7 people have to split that $1,000. That's the way exemptions work. If we exempt people on a podcast that have Woods in the background wearing a hat, then the rest of us have to pick up. It may just be pennies on my tax bill. It may be dollars on my tax bill, but the pot of money that XYZ government entity is going to get is not going to change. It's not going to lower by the people that are exempt. It's going to stay the same. So the mix of people have to pay more.
So yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. And that is maybe the rub that I have here. It's just, call it the limited government person that I am. You know who I am. But our local governments were making it before this reassessment. They're going to have more money flowing into their coffers as a result of this reassessment. And now they're talking about rolling it forward, which will increase what will be coming in even more.
No. And we're getting hung up here, and I'm going to try to explain it one more time.
I
Okay.
know. And you already tried once, and I appreciate your patience.
You take today's reassessed value and you multiply it by the rollback millage. Let's take Bobby Edmiston Assessor's case. That will generate the same money that I generated last year. Okay. What I get to keep is any new stuff, anything that came on in 2024. There was a new Brookshire's, if there was a new strip center, if there were 5,000 new houses, I get that money above and beyond what that said. So yes, I'm getting more money each year, but not off of reassessment. Reassessment times the lower millage rate generates the same amount of money.
But in 2025, what's going to happen?
2025 is not a reassessment. So unless you go do something to your house, build a big, nice $100,000 outdoor kitchen, or a $300,000 swimming pool, or a 2,000 square foot shop, your assessment should stay the same. Now, there's typically some small ticks in millage rates from time to time in years to years. Let me say this about the roll forward. They don't have to do it this year. They can do it next year. They can do it the year after. They can do it all the way up to the next reassessment.
Interesting. Everybody listening to that, listen closely to that.
Does that make more sense?
It's that Houghton education there. No offense to the Houghton folks, but you know.
Okay. If I got 2 bass in this hand and I got 3 bass in this hand, which one is more?
Right.
Oh.
Right.
So
the bag is the same if the millages are rolled back. The bag is heavier if millage rates are rolled forward.
well, yeah, that's what I was meaning a while ago. But I'm hung up on something here. I just don't see how you can say my property is worth, you know, what was the number you said? 15, 16% on average?
Yes, sir.
16% on average. Everybody's property is reassessed 16% on average more. And so then the multiplier for taxes against everything over 75,000 is not going to result in more money coming in the coffers for the taxing entities. At least not for this year, but for next year, it would be based off of that reassessment, right?
No, because your millage rate is rolling back that same percentage. So you take the whole taxable value of the parish times a millage rate, the whole millage rate, and it depends on where you live, what the millage rate is. If that's a rollback millage, that generates overall the same amount of money, except the new stuff. So are we going to get more money next year? Yes, because there's going to be new things next year.
The good thing is, and so everybody knows, we leave all of our shows online so Duke can go back and replay Bobby's explanation twice over and over.
Twice? What are you talking about? I'm going to have to watch this
I'm
daggum thing 100 more times.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and play it.
Yeah, and look, I want to say this: the comments are just rolling by, so we need to get to a couple of questions here, maybe in a few minutes.
I would love to.
All right, so I'm just gonna put them up on the bottom of the screen. Some of these may be redundant. I've just been kind of, flagging them or whatever. So if it's something you've already explained, you just do a quick explanation. We'll move on. All right. First question is from Dale Finch. How do taxpayers 65 and over, or whatever, freeze property taxes? This was voted on. So how do they actually go about getting their property taxes frozen? We hear about this all the time.
Yeah, well, they come to. I have two offices. I have one in the Benton Courthouse. I have one in Bossier City Hall on the second floor. They can come to either office. So in 2024, they're going to bring their 2023 tax return and their ID, so we can verify that they are 65 or older. And then we're going to look at the line on their tax return, adjusted gross income. If that number is $100,000 or less, they get the freeze. If that number's $100,001 and more, they don't get the freeze.
Okay. Now,
So it's
when you say freeze, does that mean they're never going to pay any more taxes, or how? Clarify that.
oh, no, it does not. The freeze only applies to your assessment. So if your house is valued at $100,000, your house is frozen as $100,000. But if, let's say, a taxing body puts a new millage on the ballot, and it's voted in by the people, that new millage is multiplied by that $100,000 frozen value. So they would pay more taxes. It's not a tax freeze, it is an assessment freeze.
Ah, good safety point. Okay, that's why I wanted to ask that. All right, here's another question. This is from Ruth Pope Johnston. Says, so if I understand, the Bossier City Council and Mayor would have voted on taxing actions for Bossier City. Is that correct? I think what she's asking is the City Council and all that, they vote on and set the tax rates inside the city.
They set just their millages inside the city. The sheriff millages is all of Bossier Parish, so it's inside city, outside city. Police jury, same way, inside city. They set only the Bossier City millage rates. So,
okay.
And I believe there's 4 or 5. So to adopt the rollback or the minimum millage rate, all it requires is a 24-hour notice posted of when the meeting is, set the meeting, vote, and that's all they can do. They can't sneak in, I'm going to roll forward, because they have to do that much more complicated long-term advertising to roll forward. So if somebody tried to roll forward today, starting today, it would probably take about 40 days before they could have a meeting to vote on it.
Okay.
Somebody sent a question, Bobby, and this is a little. You mentioned Bossier City, for example, and they was like, how much parish money the police jury, and you probably don't know this, but how much money does the police jury spend within Bossier City?
Well, and it's funny, and that is absolutely a great question. And if you were not in the weeds like I am, you wouldn't know the answer. So the police jury has several millage rates, and a couple of those millage rates, or at least one of them, once it goes into the city of Bossier, that millage rate lowers some. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's not the same millage rate because typically the police jury doesn't pave streets or do sidewalks inside of Bossier City. That's Bossier City's job. That's the parish's job, and the police jury's outside. So that millage rate they have an inside the city rate and an outside the city rate, but not on all their millage rates, just on one or two, I believe. I don't know off the
Is
top of my head. But for example, their library millage rate would be the same no matter where in the parish you are, inside or
right.
outside. It's mostly like their roads and bridges and maybe their general alimony millage.
So as a rule of thumb, would that generally be the way it would be, say in other parishes across the state, or say Halton, Benton?
Man, I can't speak to that. I don't know. But Halton and Benton and Plaindale, and yeah, it's supposed to theoretically be the same, but I would guess in other jurisdictions it is. That was the way they set up in Bossier, and I'm glad you said that. And I want to make this point. You were talking about it very early in the deal. Reassessment is not just occurring in Bossier Parish. It is mandated to occur everywhere in the state of Louisiana. And so if you have somebody that says, well, I own a house in Bienville Parish and it didn't go up like my house in Bossier Parish, it's Bienville Parish. It's just not the same as Bossier Parish.
Well, it's that, and as you were describing earlier, for folks who may not have been watching, but during you had the emergency that you had the choice to postpone reassessment or not, to which you made the choice, and that could have been a different choice in another parish.
Sure. In most, it was the same choice. And look, crystal ball, hindsight 2020, if I knew then what I knew now, we would have probably done a 6 to 8% increase back then. But again, I would look, because I've been doing this a while. I take the same heat over a 2% increase as I do over a 20% increase. It's the same heat. People come in here because their bill changed $10. We have that every day. And, they're just as upset about their $10 as people are upset about their $500 or $700.
Yeah, I'm sure there are many people that show up with torches and pitchforks all the time. So
That's why we have metal detectors at the courthouse. So
yeah, there you go. All right, here's a question. What is the assessor's millage rate? So what millage rate do you?
that is a good question. And you have the chart, Rex, that I sent
Yes,
you with all the
I
millage.
do, and let me get that up on the screen. Give me about 2 seconds here. Let me do that, get rid of that, and let me put that over here and shrink it down just a little bit. Okay, so what we're looking at now is the pre-adoption 2024 Bossier Parish millage chart.
Right. And so that 2023 millage, and just so happens mine's the very first one up there. So if I were going to roll forward, the 3.39 is what I would roll forward to if I was going to do that. However, I've already adopted my 2024 millage. I adopted 3.05 mils. That's what I adopted. So if you do the math, the average mill rate in Bossier Parish is somewhere around 118, maybe 120 mils. I'm maybe 2%. When you look at that tax bill, I'm maybe 2% of that tax bill.
And what is that?
So let me flip it though. You look at that tax bill, better than 50% of that tax bill goes to Bossier Parish School Boards.
Better be careful how loud you say that. We'll be back to the pitchforks and torches again.
I'm just saying that's the way the mix runs. So
all right. So what is that millage that the assessor's office, using you as an example, what is that millage fund? Your office operations, because that leads to another question of who actually makes the assessment. Rusty Maddox asked that question. Who actually makes the assessment? Is it you or your magic elves, or we kind of briefly touched on it.
when I ran for this office many years ago, I knocked on a lady's door and told her I was running for assessor and asked for a vote. And she said, honey, is that a full-time job? And so I have a staff of about 30 people. Uh, you know, I have probably eight, nine appraisers. Some of those are commercial appraisers. I have three customer service representatives that help people with homestead exemption, senior freezes. Hey, I need to look up the property at 123 Main Street and see who owns it. We have five or six that are what's called personal property. So a lot of people listening probably don't know this. In the state of Louisiana, all businesses pay on their movable property. So Walmart has a building and land, and they pay property taxes on their building and the land. But Walmart also pays property taxes on everything inside their store, their inventory, their shelving, the floor buffer, the cash registers, the counters, the phone system, the alarm system, the sign out front that says Walmart. They pay property taxes on all of that.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people actually realize how much the businesses have to pay. Okay, so let's go on down and we'll kind of scan down these
Well,
these militaries. Go do.
but wait a minute. Hold up a second. There's a lot of businesses that get a little bit of a gravy train, because I can think of some entities, taxing entities, that dole out tax dollars and benefits to people, and they call it economic development. And I don't know where a lot of people stand on that, but me, for one, I mean, I like to think of it sometimes as crony capitalism in different cases. I'm just wondering if we've got too many exemptions going out there. I mean, and just how much money does government need? I mean, if it was profitable, I mean, wouldn't somebody do it on their own? They wouldn't have to have the government to go and do it. I guess that's not a question. I'm just.
It's rhetorical, but you make a valid point. You have XYZ taxing body that gives away an exemption to a 20, 30, $50 million business, and then turn around and say, well, I need more money. I need to roll my millages up because I need more money. Well, the obvious question is, why'd you give that away if you needed more money? And they're in Louisiana, they're called industrial tax exemptions, and they apply to mostly manufacturing type companies. Look, Bossier's we don't have a ton of those in Bossier. Probably our biggest one, maybe 20 or $30 million when it started. It's only a 10-year exemption. You want to see some big ones? Go down to East Baton Rouge or St. John or St. James or St. Charles, where you're talking about billion-dollar plants and billion-dollar exemptions. That's where you see a lot of those, or Calcasieu Parish, where you see a lot of those, or Cameron Parish, where you have, I think it's like a $5 billion LNG plant down there coming off the Henry Hub. So those kind of things. And I get it. Some people say, well, they create 400 jobs. Okay, they create 400 jobs. But you have to decide, how much am I willing to give away for $400 jobs?
So I got a question more on the mechanics of that, and this will relate a little bit to Colonel Crockett's question. He said, how do we get a list of all exemptions? But my question is, how does the tax assessor's office get a list from the taxing authorities? Hey, these businesses are exempt. How does that work mechanically?
Mechanically, I am the tracker of all exemptions. So I am the one, LED and the Board of Commerce and Industry. My wife is sneezing in the background. Y'all have to excuse her. They are the ones, along with certain taxing bodies, that approve these. So once LED sends me the contract, which has to be signed by the governor of the state of Louisiana, then I place that property, whatever it may be, on the exempt roll. The vast majority of it is movables, like we talked about. There's not a whole lot in Bossier real estate. So these are things like cement plants or sand plants or chicken manufacturers or things like that. So if you're looking for the list of actual, Mr. Crockett's question could be taken two ways. Or if you're looking for an exemption of who is exempt, I can certainly give that list. If you're looking for a list of all the types of exemption, I believe I sent that to you, Rex. It's a lot like the sales tax exemptions. It's pages and pages.
It's a
One
lot.
that it's a long list. One that jumps out at me every time I go through it, it says gas powered watercraft. So
That was
gas,
exactly what I was fixing to say. You didn't tax me for my crawfish boat, did you?
no, not yet. But if you
Not
convert
yet.
that sucker to diesel, then it's going to get taxed. So and that's not really a North Louisiana thing. That's a South Louisiana thing where you have crew boats and jackup rigs and all this oil and gas barges and things like that. They tax watercraft down there. We have watercraft too, in the form of riverboats, but we only have a few of them. So
I had somebody send me a message and they wanted to know. They said, is Willis Knighton exempt? Do they get an exemption?
probably in Shreveport Bossier, Willis Knighton is probably the number one exempted organization in Louisiana. I actually, early in my career, decided to challenge that and made it all the way to the Louisiana Supreme Court, where I lost. And I wasn't going so much after the hospital per se. I was more like the office building. You got an office building owned by Willis Knighton. They have doctors in there, but the doctor that owns his own building right up the street is having to pay property tax on his, and I just didn't think that was right. And but you have their nonprofit exemptions, but it's only certain nonprofit exemption. It has to fall in that health and welfare category, or it has to fall in religious category. So all churches are exempt. It has to fall into fraternal. So like a VFW or a Legion post is exempt.
So,
Dedicated places of burial.
so I didn't know that history about Willis Knighton with you, and that you'd went down that road, and I appreciate that actually. But it makes me kind of think, and I hate to pose this question to you, but I think I already know the answer, and you don't have to answer it, but maybe there is some disparities within the system, and that maybe you would acknowledge there is, but I'm not asking you to. But if we had a better system, is there a better system? Should we? Because I've had people all week tell me, says, we just need to do away with the property tax. We need to go, and it needs to be based off of consumption. That's the way we need to fund our government, is based off of consumption. That's the way it's guaranteed to be equal across the board. What do you say to that argument?
Well, and obviously we're having a big debate in the state of Louisiana over tax reform, and I hear this: we need to do away with the income tax and be like Texas. Okay, well, if you pick my house up, which I pay probably close to $4,000 of property taxes on my house, you pick my house and you move it up to Texas, I'm gonna pay somewhere around $25,000 for that same house in Texas, because the state of Texas is in the property tax business. The state of Louisiana is not in the property tax business. So if you go to a consumption tax, theoretically a sales tax, well, our sales tax rate is going to be what, 20, 25, 30% on everything you buy. Uh, you know, Property tax, the theoretical term for them is ad valorem tax. It means according to value. I pay property tax according to the value of my house. If I don't want to pay property tax, and I hate to say this, I can go buy a single wide mobile home for $60,000 and sign homestead exemption, and I won't pay anything. But that's my choice. And so if you're going to do with it away with income tax and you're going to do away with property tax, what are you going to have left to fund state government? Now, some people may say, well, I don't care if state government's funded. I understand, but you got to have something.
Maybe we can park some Crown Vics and some Tahoes.
Get rid of some monuments.
Do away with some monuments. I mean, look, I learned, I hear, and I don't get it. We talked about that list of the taxing authorities around here being the school board being the biggest one. I heard something today. I hadn't been able to verify it, but I heard that, the old state school off of 220 out there. I understand that the Bossier Parish School Board is trying to buy it, and they're talking about spending $5 to $10 million or something to that effect. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but here we're having all these reassessments, and we're potentially looking at our taxes going up. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, how much more money do they need if they've got, spare money laying around that they can just throw around 5 million to buy properties for? I don't know what out there. I mean, I'm wondering if something's not broken here.
Well, is that a rhetorical
You
question?
know,
I'm just throwing it out there. It's not a question. I'm just throwing it out there.
And Duke and Rex, both of you have known me for a long time. You don't get much more than non-tax than Bobby Edmiston. Okay, it just so happens I have a job where I have to do this. You know, I'm for government that taxes and spends money wisely. I want my streets paved. I want my sidewalks. I want my drainage. I want some quality of life things. But if you're going to go put gold toilets in all the government buildings, I'm not for that. You got to be. It's got to be common sense.
Can't
I mean,
argue that.
I was having a conversation with somebody, and we were talking about some of the stuff we're talking about. All the waste that we see going on. And, I said, look, as an example, when I was in school, I remember Coach Harlan, Halton High School. If you got hurt or I remember a kid got stung by a bee or something. And what did he do? He reached in his lip, put out a big old wad of Red Man and said, "Here, boy, rub that on it. It'll be good in an hour." There wasn't no doctor. There wasn't no school nurse. There wasn't no coach, school coach. And I'm just saying, and I'm not picking on just them. Fire departments, EMS supervisors, and I hate to pick on the EMS supervisors, but we have a lot of fat in government. And I'm just wondering, at what point does government start to require less money and less of us and focus on the priorities and making sure that we have the good roads? Because if we're saying that we have good roads now and we have good government, I mean, but yet we're sawmills, we're monuments, we're doing all this crap. Something's wrong. Something is totally wrong. The prices of property, inflation, it's because I believe because we got a broken federal government and the increased spending is causing it and pushing it. It's going to break. It's going to fall apart. I mean, what happens when it all falls apart, Bobby?
And that's a good question. And Rex and I talked about this the other day. People do their federal income tax, and they're mad as heck. But who do you talk to about your federal income tax being too high? You may call your congressman or your senator, but do you really get hurt? And then you pay your state income tax, and you're mad as heck. And who do you really talk to? You call your local reps, but nothing seems to ever change. And then they got a property tax bill. Hey, I can call that guy. He's right here in Bossier Parish. And so I do think I get a lot of the frustration that people have with other things. But while a lot of those dollars, while your federal dollars may go to Montana or Wyoming or California, your state tax may go to Calcasieu Parish or St. Tammany Parish or whatever, your property tax are all local. They are all your local elected officials, school board, police jury, assessor, Cypress Black Bayou, Red River Waterway. Those are all local people that you can talk to about this.
That's a fair point. All right. Another question, and I know we'll probably start wrapping it up your segment here in a little bit, Bobby, and we appreciate all the time you spent with us, but Ruth Pope Johnston wants to know if one wants to protest their appraisal, move the question over here. May they hire an independent appraiser and provide their assessment? Also, if one's increased is over 50%, can it be phased in over a period of 4 years?
I'm going to answer the last part first. No, there's really not a phase in type period. And I get this question about, and I'm not the collector. Hey, can I pay it in 3 installments or whatever? Typically, it's all one bite of the apple. You have to pay it all. The first part of the question is, when people come up here, so there's an informal protest, and then there's a formal protest. The informal protest is coming to my office and talking to us. And if you have evidence that your house is not worth what we say it is, be it you have comps on your street, you have an appraisal from maybe a year or two when you bought the house, or maybe did another mortgage on it, whatever evidence you got, you bring it up here. And if it's wrong, we're going to fix it. We're going to change it. Maybe our square foot is wrong. But whatever it is, we're going to change it. Then there's the formal protest. The formal protest goes to the Board of Review in Bossier Parish. The Board of Review is the Bossier Parish Police Jury, and it is much like a trial. So, we're going to sit there before the Bossier Parish Police Jury. You're going to make your case, and when you get through making your case, I'm going to make my case. And your case cannot be, my taxes are too much. Your case has to be arguing that the value that Bobby has is not right, and this is why the value is not right. And that's the argument you have to have. You don't like what the police jury says, then you can go to the Louisiana Tax Commission and appeal it there. You don't like what they say, you can go to the Louisiana District Court and appeal it there, and then on up Court of Appeal or Supreme Court. So it just goes up. But if they come to us first, and I know the official protest date is on those notices. I don't remember exactly. Board Review is September 11th. That's the official date. Those protest packages have to be into them before certain periods of time. We will give you the protest form if that's what you want to do. We'll give it to you, tell you where you need to go. Typically, by the time it gets to protest, last year I probably had 6 or 8 protests, almost all of them businesses. Year before that, probably 6 or 8, almost all of them businesses. As an example, Duke, I talked about Willis Knighton. I've been in lawsuits off and on for probably 20 years with the former Diamond Jacks, protesting their assessment. Even through bankruptcy court, where they tried to get the bankruptcy court to set their assessment. I'm fighting for the people. I won it every court case with Diamond Jacks, and they paid what they were supposed to pay. So if a big company comes to me and says, you got me too much, and I'm paying $1 million in property taxes, and we look at it and we think it's right, we're not going to change it. And they can protest, and they can take me to court, and I'll fight tooth and nail for the people of Bossier Parish.
All right, one more question, and there's several others here, folks. I see them mostly. They're kind of more political related, and Duke and I'll address that, maybe some of them with Kara. But this question is from Brian Addy. Says, is there a certain percentage gap you value for tax reasons versus sellable value to account for real estate fluctuations? Is there a certain percentage
I'm not
gap?
sure. Again, when we valued Bossier Parish, we chose 96% of the January 1, 2023 value. So the state of Louisiana next year is going to come into Bossier. They're going to come into my office. They're going to say, we're going to do a ratio study. They're going to pull probably 1,000 sales, and then they'll pick out of that 1,000 sales probably 200 or 300, and then they're going to compare what I have it assessed at to what it's sold for. And if I'm less than 90%, they're going to mandate me to reassess again. And I'm not going to be. I know right now I'm at 96%. I know that's where I'm at. I know that's where that number comes in. The following year, they're going to come in, they're going to take sales, they're going to calculate a price per square foot of houses, and then they're going to compare it to houses like you were talking about, dude, that haven't sold. And they're going to say, well, the price, average price, is $120 a square foot. Do you have this house over here that hadn't sold at $120 a square foot? If I'm outside 90 or 110%, they're going to make me reassess. They're going to come in the following year after that. They're going to do what's called a whole property, and they're going to pick random businesses, and they're going to see what I have them assessed for. They'll run what's called a Marshall and Swift, a cost guide. What does it cost to build that building new? Less depreciation. So, we're being audited up here every year. Never have failed an audit. Never have failed an audit. Always try to stay below 100%.
All right, so related to that, Whitney Skates says, could you explain why you chose 96% as opposed to 90? She says that's the low end of the state statute.
That is the low end of the state statute, and 96% is an average. Okay. So obviously you're going to have a lot below 96%. You're going to have a good bit of number above 96%. For the very reasons I just said, if I pick 90% and the tax commission comes in here and happens to pull a lot of sales that are below 90% or a lot of assessments below 90%, I'm going to fail the ratio study, and they're going to mandate me to reassess the whole parish, not just those they pulled, the whole parish. I've never been below their ratio. So I guess the answer to the question is I like to give myself a little cushion so I know that I'll pass that ratio study.
When were you first elected?
Oh, 1998.
We had that question scroll through a few minutes ago. So, all right, Mr. Lowrie, you're up.
No, I'm done. I'm done. The beatings
Oh, and
will
calf
not
rope.
continue. I heard what I needed to hear. My taxes are not going up. That's everybody else.
But I do see smoke coming out of those headphones.
Oh, I just want me one of those exemptions. And if I'm gonna start a business in Bossier, I'm going to the port and I'm gonna get them to hook me up, dadgummit.
You just name it something hospital. Just there you go.
That's right. Or start your own church, dude, and you'll be good to go. But you make a valid point. Everybody's for the exemption when the exemption benefits them. When the exemption doesn't benefit them, they're not for it. And I get that all the time. Well, why do you have to be 65 to freeze it? Why can't I do it at 60, or why can't I do it at 55? Why does it have to be $100,000? It's a number, and it's a number picked by the state. You're going to see that number go up. How far is it? What is a reasonable number for somebody over 65? If they make $300,000 a year, are they going to be frozen? I can't answer that question. But at some point, when you narrow down the number of people that are paying, Duke, that's when your taxes go up, because you're funding more of the pie that other people are not funding.
Well, it's that and the quantity of exemptions, and then our governments continue to keep finding more ways to spend money on more unique and interesting things that do we really need or do we not? But at the end of the day, everybody watching this show and all the voters out there, we all vote for it. We're voting yes and no on all of these things. And if we don't agree with it, or if we disagree with it, are we calling our elected officials and saying, we don't agree with that? They certainly are calling you saying, I don't agree with my taxes going up. But are they calling their police jurors? Are they calling their councilman? Are they calling the sheriff? Are they calling the Cypress district? But yet we have these elections and they run right out there and they vote for whatever. There's not enough questions being asked in my opinion, by the public. So it's our own fault.
Well, and Duke, you made a good point earlier about taxi bodies, and So the Bossier assessor, my only income in this office is property tax. That's all I get. I don't get anything else. I say that I get a little revenue sharing off of the homestead that the state promised to pay us back for, which they don't reimburse dollar for dollar. But a lot of these other taxing bodies, they get sales tax. They get other forms of monies to operate on that some of these taxing districts don't get. And, so like you said, they're deciding an exemption on property tax because they're going to get a pot of sales tax money. Well, I don't get a pot of sales tax money. So they're cutting me out.
Mr. Bobby, I appreciate all your education tonight, and this may be the most number of questions and comments we've had on a show. It obviously has got everybody's dander up, but I think hopefully after listening to this, they're at least a little more educated. And I want to remind everybody, stay tuned because Kara's coming on in just a few minutes because there are some mortgage implications to all this that she's going to talk specifically about. But we appreciate you coming on and well, like Brian Haygood said, staying in the hot seat.
Well, and look, that this is my job, and I'm not going to run from my job that I do, and I'm willing to take the tough questions. And I appreciate Rex, you and Duke invite me on the show and give me this opportunity. And if the public will notice, all the articles being written typically during reassessment, it's Bobby Edmiston they're talking to. They're not talking to other assessors around here because I believe they think I'm going to explain it, except in Duke's case, I'm going to explain it fairly good, and that I'm going to not sugarcoat it, and that I'm going to give them the right information. And I don't mind facing the hard questions. Any of your viewers that have any question, they can call my office tomorrow. You're probably not going to talk to me personally because there again, I got 30 employees but we're going to get to your call. We're going to get back with you quick and we're going to answer your question. The answer may not be what you want to hear or what you like at the end of the day, but it's like I said, most people come up here and say, oh no, that value is right. Well, if the value's right, I have nothing else to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
I'll
a
call
good point.
tomorrow so you can explain it to me again.
Hey, dude, have your wife call me.
I ain't even gonna say nothing.
As you know, I deal with her a pretty good bit, as I do with a lot of companies and a lot of things. And the one thing, people may say this, I'm being difficult. A lot of people may say I don't like it, but what I never want them to be able to say is Bobby is inaccessible. That he doesn't willing to face the questions that he runs from. I'm not going to run. If I'm going to be in front of a firing squad, I'm going to take my blindfold off and see what's going on. So.
Well, you definitely done that tonight for an hour and 38 minutes.
That's the way all our politicians should be, but not all of them are. And we appreciate you coming on, Bobby, and maybe we'll have you back on in the future.
If y'all need me back in a week or so, I'll be glad to, or in the future, either one.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Well, okay. So don't forget, folks, stay watching because Kara's going to come on in a few minutes. I think she's still planning on coming on. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think she might even be in the green room. I'm not sure.
Ah, yes, she is. Okay, so
and yeah, so again, I am going to have to call Bobby again because I
explain it again. Rewind.
Or maybe I'll have to get my wife to explain it to me because she knows the stuff inside and out, definitely. But the way I understood that was my taxes aren't going up, and I know that's not right.
Well, look, the taxes aren't exactly going up. The value of the properties is going up. Therefore, the dollar amount you're paying is, except those taxing bodies that may potentially do a roll forward. how I understand it. All right, let me go ahead and I'm going to switch screens and let's see if we can get your lovely bride on here. Let me assign her to one of these guest members here. Aha! Miss Kara, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Oh, and we can hear you loud and clear. Excellent.
Actually,
Fantastic.
sounds good.
I like to be heard. You doubted me?
All right. So you and I were having this dialogue, and you being the mortgage extraordinaire, and you were enlightening me to there's some other considerations here as it applies to people's mortgages and to their escrow accounts. And I, you go further with that.
So, the escrow account really is the absolute most confusing part about a mortgage. It's confusing because of all of the different entities that are involved, all the third parties that we can't control, homeowners insurance, property taxes, whether it be city and parish, mortgage insurance, which that's just kind of an in and out. But the main two are the insurance and the taxes. So the jumping off point really, and I do have to, sorry, the cat's coming over here. I do have to commend Bobby just through the years, and he really is serious when he says that, because he has done a lot of educating me in years past. Because what would happen is we get tax information from the title company before we close the loan. The assessment might be, for example, at $100,000, but the property is selling for $250,000. Well, if that assessment is so low, then what has changed? And so then once you really get to looking into that, they remodeled, they've got a pool. That's a great example of the extended garage. What changed for that assessment to change that much? Now, Bossier Parish, in relation to Caddo Parish, Bossier Parish is pretty quick about the reassessments once those deeds come across. They run a pretty tight ship. Caddo has gotten quicker, but they're a little slower when it comes to picking up on those sales prices, getting the tax notices out, and getting people the notifications so they can file their homestead. But going back to the closing. So I learned several years ago, when I would have several people at the end of the year, those tax notices come out. So of course, when they come out in December, they're retroactive for the whole entire year. So let's say that bill comes out for $2,000. Well, let me use an easier number. I don't do math in public. Comes out for $1,200, but yet you've only been putting $50 in every month, because that's what it was based on for 2023. You're short that year. So let me stop. Let me kind of back up one more time. So when I obtain that information from the title company, I ask them what was the information for last year. And then I ask them, what is the estimate of taxes based on the sales price? And the reason I do that, and I've done this for a very, very long time, is because why am I going to set up a monthly payment based on property taxes of what the house was assessed for 4 years ago, really, when now it's selling for quite a bit more? Because when I set up that monthly payment, I need them to be ready for December when those taxes come due. So when we close, the confusing part about that escrow account, taxes are paid forward. So you go to closing, you collect 1 year of insurance, pay the insurance company. And then we say, okay, at the end of the year, taxes are $1,200. So we set up your escrow account for that tax amount. And then we just accumulate every month. 1/12 of those numbers go in and sit in that escrow account. Then when December comes out, we pull that money out. Well, bingo, this year is a reassessment year. Everybody is being reassessed because you know what? Your property is worth more. We don't like it. Well, we kind of like it. We kind of like our property to be worth more. We all know that our house is worth more. We're all beating our chest because, damn, my house is worth this amount. But then when the tax bill comes in, no, nobody likes to pay more in taxes. I won't even get on my soapbox about that. But at the end of the day, it is worth more. These are the millages that our politicians have set up. So that's what's going to happen. Because if you had your house on the market right now and you're getting ready to sell it, you're happy for that increased amount because you're going to make all that extra profit. So to kind of stop and to kind of back up, I am probably one of the only lenders and loan officers in this town that I'm aware of that sets up a monthly payment on the sales price for the property taxes. And I do that to protect my clients so that when they get to December, they've got enough in that escrow account to pay their taxes retroactively. The other reason that's important is because that proration from the seller is also based on the sales price. The reason that's important, they're reaping the benefit of the value of this house for this year. It's going to get reassessed this year by the slimmest of chance that Bobby's office misses it, but that's highly unlikely. So why do I want to set my client up for failure for them to be short in December? So I know that was a lot. Any questions, dear?
You talking to me?
Well, I don't call Rex dear.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes, more language here. No, so you were when we were talking about it, and you were saying that okay, in this hypothetical, this isn't a 1-year deal on potentially your escrow being short. That it would walk through how you explained it to me. That it could go into a 2-year shortage or a multi-year shortage potentially.
So I'll give you a prime example. I had a client that was new construction last year. So as Bobby was talking about earlier, because the home was not finished January 1st of 2023. So picture that calendar year last year in your brain. So 2023, the house was not finished. So we set up taxes based on lot only. $1 million house, it's lot only, say $500-$600 a year. And that's how we set up the payment. December rolls around, the tax bill comes out, it's $600. He has that money in his escrow account. His taxes are paid. Well, he's still paying based on $600 a year because keep in mind, you're December of 23, January, February, all of 2024, unless he's yelled, hey, Kara, I need to manually readjust my escrow account because I'm going to owe an estimated $8,000 to $9,000 at the end of 2024. I need to go ahead and start putting more in that escrow account. I need to go ahead and make sure that I file my homestead exemption for 2024 so that when December of 2024 comes, like we are right now, they get a double whammy. They get reassessed because it's a reassessment year, and they get reassessed because now their property is seen. The tax assessor sees the house there. So he gets let's say that he didn't want to write a big $8,000 check because he's short. Then the lender, so servicing will then say, okay, sir, we'll go ahead and make that payment for you. We'll advance you that money to pay that $8,000 in taxes. Take that $8,000 divided by 12. I'm going to collect that over the next 12 months from you. So that's one issue. The second issue is I need to be ready for next December. So now I go up again by that exact same amount. So it's a double whammy. Now that's a gross exaggeration, but it's a very real one that just happened like 3 weeks ago. Normally it's not that much of a difference, but other than literally put you in my car and take you to the tax assessor to file your homestead exemption, we as a lender go the extra effort to make sure that we remind you multiple times, we follow up with you, but then it just gets to a point where you're an adult. I can help you unring some of it later, but you're just going to have a mess. I can only do so much.
So we got a question from the YouTube side. Let me see if I can put it on the screen, and
Sure.
I'll read it. It says, when approximately will we be notified by our servicing mortgage company about a shortfall and our new new assist text volume, whatever? Okay, so when are they going to get notified? Like in the case of Acadiana Mortgage, when do y'all notify, or how does that process work?
So that's a great question. It depends on what type of loan they have, and it really depends on who their servicer is. Some servicers will reevaluate the escrow account on their anniversary date every year of the month in which they purchased the home or closed on the loan. Some do the first quarter of the year because most taxing entities are payable. Most taxes are paid in December. Some states are paid quarterly or either semi-annually. I think Mississippi, is semi-annually, but that's irrelevant. But anyway, it depends on the servicer. And here's the problem. So we can only collect what we have evidence of. So homeowners insurance, we get the declaration page like a month or two before the premium comes due, so we know what that one's going to be, and then it's paid forward, right? So usually on the homeowner's insurance, the money is in that escrow account. Well, actually, that's again kind of back to Duke's question, and I forgot about that, is we're in this time of insurance has been increasing along. Now we have the double whammy of property taxes. So we are getting hit kind of twice, and then depending on when you're reassessed, when you're reevaluated will depend on how short and when you know. Because keep in mind, so like for example, what we do, if we keep a ledger, we keep a log in our office to make sure people go file their homestead. So we know right now I can go in and I can look up and see what your taxes are. If it's a fairly large one, what we try to do is let the client know, so that they can go ahead and start putting some money into their escrow account to be ready, or at least saving up for it. But it's not always able to do that because we have to have something in writing. So until these notices have come out right now, there's nothing we can do other than estimate 2024 taxes. Now, I as a servicer and a lender and a loan officer, I still stay, as you can tell, very, very engaged with my clients after closing in dealing with these escrow accounts. I'm pretty emboldened in that if I know that they're going up, then I am going to direct servicing, request/direct servicing, give them the documentation so that they can go in and manually reevaluate their escrow account to give that information to the client so that we can set them up for success, so that when December comes around, they don't have a really crappy Christmas present to realize how short that escrow account is. And that's great. Servicing will advance the money, but now my payment's going up a couple of times. And also keep in mind, taxes are paid in December. If you're not reevaluated until February or March of the next year, you're already a quarter into the next year to be ready for the increase for December of that next year. So it's very much a snowball, and we try to get a handle on it very, very quickly to figure out exactly. So first of all, what is the problem? If there is, how do we resolve it? And then communicate that information to the client.
All right, so a couple of questions, or you got something to do?
No, that was exactly what I was fixing to say.
Okay, so we got one from Larry James Hawkins. Says, can we send extra money to our mortgage company before the new tax year and earmark it to go to the escrow account to cover the increase in taxes or insurance to prevent an increase in a monthly mortgage payment? Need me to put that up there again?
Was the question, can you do that?
Yes. Can we send extra money?
I can't read, it's too small.
Yeah, okay. It says, can we send
Absolutely.
extra money?
Specifically, yes. Specifically earmark it to escrow account. Under federal law, if you do not dictate to servicing where you want it applied, they have to apply it towards interest.
Okay. Next question from Cassie.
So yes,
okay, Cassie Casario Rogers. She says, does this mean our house notes will go up quite a bit as a result of the large increase?
It can, Cassie. Quite a few people, their payments have gone up $400 and $500 because, just for example, the client I was telling you about earlier with the $1 million home, his homeowner's insurance in 2 years was like $2,100, and now it's like $5,500. So he got it. It was just a mess as far as how much his was increasing. So high means different things to different people as far as the amount of the increase. So sometimes it's 30 or 40 bucks. The majority of time, especially in the environment that we're in right now, with homeowners insurance going up, coupling that now with property taxes going up, some people are getting hit pretty strongly.
All right. So, what would you recommend that folks do? You know, if they're not using Acadiana Mortgage, then what can they do to kind of be proactive about this? Everybody's got the notices now. They know the tax monies are going up or increasing for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So what should they do? Should they reach out to their mortgage company? What should they do?
We hear a lot of clients who have a very, very, very difficult time getting in touch. First of all, I think I'm the only local loan officer that will still talk to a client even after the loan is closed and after the servicing is transferred, because the longest we will service a loan will be 6 months. but we still service our clients afterwards. So we have set up a document actually that can be filled out that we help a lot of clients, whether they are our client or whether it's a coworker that somebody works with. It's, hey, I know my mortgage lady will help you. Here, reach out to her. So I think y'all are going to post a link. It's what we do all day, every day. You know, if you have an IT question, then you call an IT person. If you have a medical question, then you call a medical person. Well, I'm the mortgage person. And if I don't know, then I can figure out how to help you. So, but what we need is we need a little bit of documentation in order to facilitate figuring out exactly what happened. The majority of time, it's people need information. They need to know, okay, I understand the words. I know what this says. What does this really mean to me? Use us as a resource for that. We would be more than happy to help you. So it's a Google Doc. It just asks you a couple of questions, gives us a little bit, it gives us just the pertinent information that we need to know. We're going to ask for a couple of documents. Once you hit submit, it's going to come back to you, let you know the things that we need. You can email that information into us. We just have to go in and analyze the information to get an idea. And, you know, I can't, your servicer is not going to talk to me, but I can empower you to give you the knowledge of what happened, what needs to be fixed, how it needs to be fixed, and then you can direct your current servicer to help you do that. I have gotten involved before. It gets a little more cumbersome depending on the servicer, but I don't really take no too well. So especially when it comes to trying to help somebody work through something like that. So it just depends on the circumstances with the client.
Yeah, and we'll make sure and share that form link out in the comments here in just a second, and we'll share that out on Bossier Watch after the fact too, this evening or tomorrow or something like that. So that'll be real helpful to folks. All right. What else? I mean, I'm about taxed and loan and mortgaged out for tonight, but is there anything else that folks should know, Kara?
You know, I guess the key is paying attention to those insurance notices that come in, paying attention to those escrow disclosures that come in. If you really think about an escrow disclosure, it really is a linear timeline of what is going into your escrow account every month, what is coming out. Servicing can only hold a certain amount of money under federal law in that escrow account. So once you plug it all in, if there's any time over the next 12 months, there's too much money in, then they have to give you a refund for that. So that's also the purpose of that escrow analysis. The key is find a loan officer, find someone, a trusted, you know, I know it's kind of a catchphrase, but a trusted advisor that can give you that information so that you can then go on and do other things, but know exactly what you need to do. Taxes and insurance are catching people off guard. The key is being proactive to make sure what they are and try to get ahead of it as soon as you can.
So this was a question earlier from Ryan Haygood. So it's directed to Duke. Maybe both of you want to take it. Kara, I'm not sure how much you can say, you know, officially or whatever. But anyway, so the question is from Ryan Haygood. He says, Duke, what is the housing market doing right now? How many mortgage brokers are not renewing their licenses?
So did you want to talk to that, babe, or I'm good?
No,
so
go,
you
no,
really
you,
have, okay, you really have kind of three different types of entities. So you have your banks, and then your banks owned by a bank, they're FDI insured, you know, the depository institutions. Then you have your non-depositories. Within that non-depository column, you have brokers and lenders. We fall into the lender column because when we go to closing, we're funding it with our money, and it is our name on the documents. All right. I, as an independent mortgage lender, still have to have a license because I am not owned by a bank or credit union. My lobby apparently wasn't as strong as theirs. So I have to have a license. A broker has to have a license, but if you work for a bank, you do not necessarily have to have a license. So to answer your question, Ryan, the renewals in Louisiana are in the month of December. Renewals were down last year. They revised that a couple of times. I don't have a current number, but it was down a good bit. Certain states are down way more than others. And then December, you know, probably will go down even more. There need to be a few more go down, if I'm being honest, because some people just don't do good business. So.
Interesting answer. All right. I'm done. What about you, Mr. Duke? You're still thinking about that dadgum math earlier.
Oh, I'm still
Uh,
tied up. And look, I'm not the only one because I saw somebody in one of the comments. Uh, they referenced that. Hang on. Okay, I gotta find it. I gotta find it here. Um,
So we're getting a lot of comments that Louisiana is looking less and less attractive. I mean, look, I hate to tell you, folks, like Bobby was saying, that everybody says Texas, but there are some disadvantages, so it's,
mm.
I don't know. I think it's widespread.
well, Greg Brown said, Val Baker, it was rhetorical. Bobby said the assessment wasn't a tax increase. that was one of them. There's another one.
Well, it depends on what the definition of is, I guess. But technically, the rates have not increased unless some of the entities roll them forward. Again, the amount you're paying is increased because the value of your property or real estate or house or business or whatever has theoretically increased.
Right.
Okay, but if you're paying more money because it was assessed at a higher value, your taxes are increasing. Is it not
But
taxes
you
that you're paying?
but you also have more, you've added more to your balance sheet because your house is worth more.
Bingo.
I don't
Now it's
care
not
about that.
realized yet. Is
I
hold on,
I
it's not
don't care
realized
about
yet.
that. All I care
Imagine,
about is the amount of
well,
taxes I'm paying. And somebody's
well,
telling me I'm not paying more taxes, but yet I'm got to come out of my pocket with more money. Well, what is it? Fairy dust? I mean,
why don't you contact your legislators because they're the ones setting the millages? Why can you do something about that? Do you know somebody?
well, every single week I do share examples of dealing with our legislators.
Well,
It's
we
time
pretty
we got to get
much
Okay.
we do get
care.
on our
care
soapbox, and Duke gets on his quite a bit every Tuesday.
I've got cuts lined up right now. 34, 35, 36 through 40 right now to exemplify just what I'm talking about. Uh, Government waste. Anyway,
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
until more people take it, until more people pay attention and more people get pissed off enough and more people start demanding that our taxes be lowered, they will continue to do what they do.
yeah, bingo. That
well,
is the right answer. Uh, let's see. Shall we? I don't know if we should subject your lovely wife to
no,
this. Shall I
no,
go to the
no.
screenshots, or maybe we'll give her plausible deniability, and she can disconnect that way? She's like, "Well, I don't know what they said after I left."
Well, I mean, the bottom line, look, I had pre-programmed some notes of the things I wanted to say, and Kara knows how I feel. She's articulating it, but I was wanting to say to everybody watching the show, and it's kind of in the beginning, this isn't a Republican or a Democrat thing. It's not a party
Mm-mm.
thing at all. It's just a broken government thing. And the broken government thing, we have broken politicians. We have a mindset amongst our politicians that it's their money to go up there and spend, 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 spend. And if you want to go ahead and go to, as an example, let's go to cut
37.
34. Go to
Okay.
no, let's go to cut 34. And right here, that we filed this exact same public information request, but this one was Sobo Live and West Marriott, and this was getting Juliana Parks expense reports from January 1 of 23, to 7/31 of 24, a total of $11,934. Philip Rogers, that during that same time
Well,
frame, 10,152. Now we submitted that same one and broke it down just over the, if you go to cut 35 over the past, it paints it in a different picture, but just for this year, and which includes part of that number, and it was like $4,400 just for this year.
well, Duke.
Ooh,
I
watch your Mardi
mean,
Gras in there.
yeah. I mean, those little tiaras or whatever that the princess has to get are expensive.
But I'm just saying, I mean, how many, I
Well,
don't
wait a
know,
minute. Wait a minute.
how
Wait a
many
minute.
Tahoes are riding
No,
around?
no, no.
How
Let's
many
see our.
monuments?
Let's see
I
our
mean,
tax dollars at work. Look, they're up there hobnobbing with the Speaker of the House. They're on the Speaker's balcony. It's not the balcony of the taxpaying citizens, it's the Speaker's balcony.
a lot of work going on right there. Lots
Wait
of
a
work.
minute. Here, they're grilling hamburgers and hot dogs, discussing parish business.
That lots of work right there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, just a few little examples. All right.
Now, I mean, look, you're blocked on her page, right?
Yes, I am.
I'm blocked on her page.
Bossierwatch is blocked on her page.
So obviously we didn't go hunting this up. Somebody
No.
sent it all to us.
It was sent to us.
So to whoever sent all that to us, hat tip to you, because you're paying attention to waste in government. And it just goes to the point that our local legislators, meaning our police jurors, our councilmen, all that, they're not trying to reduce the size of government. They're increasing the size of government. They're spending more money. Any extra amount of money we give them in taxes, they're going to spend more. And I don't know how to correct it, except for all of the folks watching have got to get involved in politics, and you've got to start paying attention, and you've got to change your mindset. I mean, just we all these exemptions and all the freebies out of government, all the different things. I mean, we are all we have to do to look for the cause of the problem is just look in the mirror.
Look, I can't disagree with that. And I think most folks would agree with you, especially when they get these tax notices that the amount of taxes that they're paying are increasing. That's when everybody gets their dander up. That's when the pitchforks and the torches come out.
Well, let's close the show out. Go to the top, and I shared a link. And Milton Friedman. I don't know how many people are familiar with the famous economist Milton Friedman, but let's close the show out with his words, and we'll call it a night.
That sounds like a good plan. Look, we want to let everybody know we were, I don't know, 250, 275 people watching. We appreciate everybody watching and the comments. We appreciate, of course, Bobby Edmiston coming on and Kara for providing the additional information. So y'all go check out Acadiana Mortgage. Hint, hint.
We'll have the link if you want to get an escrow analysis by Kara. We'll have the link in the show notes for you to go there, and she can call you and figure it all out and do that math.
All right, here we go.
God knows I'm not the math person.
Yeah, okay.
Clearly.
Clearly not. All right, so here we go. We're going to close it out with this. Y'all listen to Milton Friedman for just a moment, and we will see you next Tuesday at about 7 p.m.
As I said before, keep your eye on one thing and one thing only, how much government is spending, because that's the true tax. Every budget is balanced. There is no such thing as an unbalanced federal budget. You're paying for it. If you're not paying for it through it in the form of explicit taxes, you're paying for it indirectly in the form of inflation or in the form of borrowing. The thing you should keep your eye on is what government spends. And the real problem is to hold down government spending as a fraction of our income. And if you do that, you can stop worrying about the debt. As I said before,